Masechet Baba Mesia Daf Samech Zayin. Amad Rav Nachman. Hashta Adamur Banan Asmachta La Kanya. Based on the discussion we had before, we've concluded that asmachta is not an effective transaction. We gave the example of a lender. There's the case of the Mishnah, who lends, let's say, $100,000, and he gets a field to hold on to as collateral. And the lender says, if you don't pay back by the 3-year deadline, then I'm keeping the field. The borrower says, fine, you can keep the field. At that point, thinking that, I'm sure I'm going to pay it. However, he doesn't fully decide sincerely that the field is really going to go over there. So in that case, even if he doesn't pay by the 3-year deadline, the field does not go to the lender. Okay, so in such a case, let's say they didn't know that, and the lender takes the field, and the borrower thinks he has to give it over, and in the meantime, the lender has it for a few months, and he collects the produce on that field. And in the end, it goes to court, and they say, "Oh, you made an asmachta. You didn't have to give the field in the first place. You didn't mean it when you said it. You get the field back." The question is, what about the produce? So Rav Nachman says, Hadar ar'a v'hadre pere. Now that we know that asmachta is an invalid, therefore, if a lender does collect the field based on this asmachta, wrongly, mistakenly, then he has to return the field, and any produce that he enjoyed in the meantime, he also has to give back because he took it illegally. Good, makes sense. Now, we ask, so you're trying to tell me that according to Rav Nachman, if someone waives their right to something mistakenly, it's not a valid waiving of the right. In this case, the buyer thought that the lender gets the field and the produce. So he said, okay, it's your field. Yeah, and you can keep the produce. He said that. But it was based on a mistake. When he finds out it was a mistake, then that forgiveness is not considered forgiveness, because we see the lender has to return the produce to the owner. So that's what it seems that Rav Nachman says. Here's the problem. Rav Nachman over here seems to contradict that. V'ha'itmar, hamocher perot dekel l'chavero, amar Rav Huna, ad shelo ba'u la'olam yachol lachazor bo. Mi sheba'u la'olam en yachol lachazor bo. Here we're dealing with the case of makneh davar shelo ba'u la'olam, trying to make an acquisition of something that does not yet exist in the world. So here we have two opinions. A seller sells produce of palm trees to someone else. These palm trees right now are bare, but the seller says, listen, whatever will grow on these palm trees, I'll sell you now for $1,000. Give me $1,000 now. And then later in the season, when it grows, they are yours. Is that a binding agreement? Rav Huna says, before they actually grow, before they come into the world, the seller can say, you know what, I changed my mind. Forget about it. And the buyer can't say, well, I didn't mean you agreed. Agreed on what? Nothing exists yet. I sold you nothing. So he can change his mind. However, once they grow, then the seller can no longer change his mind, because even though at the time that he made the transaction, they didn't exist yet, the transaction is still valid. And once they grow, then that's it. They become binding, and the buyer has the right to it. The seller cannot change his mind. That's the opinion of Rav Huna. Rav Nachman amad, af mi sheba'u la'olam yachol lachazor bo. Rav Nachman says, even after the fruit grows, the seller can still say, listen, forget about it, I'm reneging on the deal. Why? Because at the time of the transaction, there was nothing there. So he sold him something that didn't exist. And a sale of something that doesn't exist is not a valid sale. Okay, that's the machloket. Now, building on that, V'amar Rav Nachman, Modena di'ish shamit ve'achil la mepekinan mineh. Rav Nachman agrees, however, that if the buyer goes and seizes some of the fruit and takes it, we do not remove it from him, even though the sale technically was invalid, right? There's no such thing as a sale. It's like I'm selling you the Empire State Building. I don't own it to sell it to you. This thing does not exist. I'm selling you some future thing. Here it is close to existing because the fruit does exist. It's not like selling gold that will appear all of a sudden, right? The tree exists and you see where it's going to come out. Nevertheless, Rav Nachman says it's an invalid sale. So therefore, from the letter of the law, the buyer should have to return it. However, because the buyer and the seller thought, mistakenly it's true, thought that one can make such a sale. So the seller waived his rights to the fruit, right? That's what he did when he sold. He says, listen, this fruit will grow, will be yours. He waived his right mistakenly. Because he did that, we consider that forgiveness to be a valid forgiveness, such that the buyer is not really allowed to take it, but if he does, we're not going to take it back from him. So here we see the opposite. Rav Nachman over here said that if you waive your rights mistakenly, it's not the rights are not waived, and you have to return that fruit. And here he says you don't have to return it. How could Rav Nachman contradict himself? The answer is Hatam Zebine Hacha Halva'a. In this case of selling the fruit on the date palm, this is a sale. So when it comes to a sale, then Rav Nachman fundamentally thinks that if you waive your rights to something, then that's it. Even though it was a mistake, you waived your rights, you can't get it back. So fundamentally says you shouldn't be able to get it back. The thing here, when in the case of a loan, is this will look like interest. How will it look like interest? The lender lent $100,000, and he got this land as collateral. He's holding on to the land. He says, if you don't pay back in 3 years, I keep the land. Okay, so now he thinks that this is valid, and he's keeping the land, and he's enjoying the produce. Turns out, this is only asmachta. He has to return the land. If you let him keep the produce, that means he is benefiting. He's getting whatever, $1,000 worth of produce for the benefit of giving a loan, right? He gave a loan, and now he gets a kickback. That looks like interest, even if not deoraita. It's still at least midirabanan, and therefore, in that case, it's prohibited because it looks like interest. So that now we explained it. Amar Rava. Havayatibna kamed Rav Nachman uba'elot be'ona'a ve'odik hazitan ailoniit. Rava says, I was sitting as a student before Rav Nachman. We were learning about the subject, and he said this halacha that mechila beta'ut is mechila when it comes to a sale. You, even though it was a mistake, but you agreed to it, so that's it. You forego your rights to that thing. I heard him say this halacha, and I had a question in mind that I wanted to ask him. However, Rav Nachman noticed that I was going to ask a question, and he preempted and answered me. My question was going to be from Ona'ah, and he answered me by showing me the case of Ailonit. Now we'll explain what was the question and what was the answer. If a seller overcharges a buyer, it's supposed to be $100, he charges him $125. Now, the buyer, he agreed to the price and he paid it. So this is a mechila. He was okay with paying this, but it was a mistake. He didn't know that he was being overcharged. And so what's the halacha in that case? You overcharged by 6 or more, you have to return the money. So you see here that mechila beta'ut is not mechila because you have to return the money. This goes against Rav Nachman, your principle that mechila beta'ut in a sale is a mechila. If it is a mechila, then why does he have to return the overcharge? That was Rava's question. But before Rava could even answer it, Rav Nachman gave an answer. Ve'odik hazitan ailonit. He showed me the case of ailonit hare, ailonit mechila betauti vehavya mechila. A case of ailonit is the ailonit is a woman who cannot bear children. She's not developing hormonally, and she will not going to be able to have children. So if a man marries an ailonit, and he didn't know it was an ailonit, he thought that she was a regular woman, and then she's not developing, and he says, therefore this is a kiddushin betaut. The whole marriage is null and void from the beginning. It's not even a divorce. He doesn't have to divorce her. He says that this was a false sale, and therefore the whole thing is done. In that case, produce that he receives, she agrees to forego it, but it turns out to be a mistake, and there it goes through. She doesn't get it back. We'll explain what we're talking about because we're going to learn a Mishnah about the subject. Nitnan, Mishnah Ketubot. Hamema'enet ve'asheniya va'ailonit en lahen lo ketubah ve'lo perot ve'lo mezonot ve'lo bela'od. This Mishnah teaches that 3 types of women. Mema'enet, that's a minor girl who doesn't have a father, and her mother or older brother marry her off. It's a kiddushin midrabanan, and as long as she's a minor, she can refuse. And if she does so, then that marriage that she went through, it's not just a divorce, it's annulled from the beginning. She's not married at all. She doesn't get a ketubah. Why should she get a ketubah? She wasn't married, retroactively. So the husband does not have to pay her a ketubah. And also a shiniyah. If a man marries a forbidden relation, we're not talking about an immediate forbidden relation like a sister or mother, because then the marriage would not take effect at all. We're talking about a secondary prohibition that the rabbis added, for example, a grandmother. And so the rabbis say this is a prohibited marriage, and therefore you enter into prohibited marriage, you don't deserve a ketubah. So they also lose the right to the ketubah, and they have to get divorced. And the third one is Ailonit. When they got married, he thought she was a regular developing woman who can have children, but it turns out that she cannot. And therefore, he says the marriage is null and void, and therefore she also does not get her ketubah. In these cases, we're going to focus on Ailonit now. Not only does she lose her ketubah, let's say she brought a field into the marriage. So the law is, when she brings property into the field, the husband can enjoy the produce, nichse melog, while they're married, and then at the end of the marriage, she takes her field back. But he gets the produce in the meantime. So now this husband and Ailonit, they were married for some time, let's say a year, before I recognize that she's an Ailonit, and he's receiving the produce the whole time now, and she's okay with it because she thinks that they're married, so he has every right to take the produce. But now it turns out that, this was a mistaken marriage, and there was no marriage to begin with, and she doesn't get her ketubah. We do not say that the husband has to return the produce to her, because she already forgoes her right to it, and even though it was in error, because it turns out they weren't married, nevertheless, she doesn't get it back. So you see, Rav Nachman brings an Ailonit as a proof for his own opinion that mechila betaut is a mechila. That's it. You said it's okay. You said he can have it, even though it's a mistake. You don't get it back. Just to finish the Mishnah, he also doesn't have to pay for a sustenance anymore because they're not married. And any, let's say, clothing that she brought into the marriage, normally he would have to return that clothing, even if it was worn out. She gets it back, and she doesn't have a right to that either. Okay, so now we see that we have a question and a challenge that Rav Nachman answered. But then the Gemara comments, "Velo hi lo ona'ah havyati yubteh velo ailonit misaya aleh." Upon further analysis, actually, ona'ah was not a good question, and ailonit was not a good answer. These are for different reasons. Lo ona'at yubted, layadat ite ona'ah. Ona'ah was not a question to begin with. The truth is, Rav Nachman never answered why ona'ah is not a valid question. He just brought a different counter proof, right? But he didn't address ona'ah itself. And the reason why ona'ah is not a valid challenge to Rav Nachman's principle rule is that in the case of when someone's overcharged, he doesn't even know that he was overcharged, that he would forgive it. It's not like he knows, the market value is 100, but I'll pay 125, and I'm okay to give you the surcharge. He just comes in. That's what the seller tells him is the price. He pays it without knowing. He never did any mechila at all. Not even mechila betaut to go back on. He wasn't mochel that extra number at all, and therefore he certainly gets it back. That's different from a case like ours where the person knowingly said, I'm giving you this produce, right, because I think it's yours, but they're knowingly giving over that thing, whereas in this case, he doesn't even know that it is ona'ah. And ailonit velo ailonit mesaya le denichala de tepuk ala shema de ishut. When an ailonit says, you know what, keep the produce, it's not because she is foregoing her right by mistake. It's actually not a mistake. She's foregoing her right on purpose because it's better for her to be known as a married woman, even though now she's actually not married anymore and turns out retroactively she was never married. She would like to be known as a married woman or someone who was once married. It's good for her status, for her reputation. It's kind of shameful to say she's unmarriageable or marriage was never anything to begin with. So if she goes and demands the fruit back, they're going to say, why do you want the fruit back? Because we were never married in the first place. It goes to Beit Din. Everybody knows about it. It's worth it for her, whatever that number is of what that fruit's worth, it's worth it for her to forget about it on purpose, knowing that she has a right to it, but she'd rather have her reputation intact, and that's why these two cases are not relevant, and they are not the same as a case where one guy sold the future fruits of a tree where that sale was invalid, and so when the seller thought that the buyer can take the fruits, he forgives his right to it, but that was a mistake. Even though that was a mistake, if the buyer comes and seizes it, nevertheless the buyer can take it. And so the Rav Nachman's law stands that mechila b'ta'ut is a mechila. Next case. Sahi iteta da'amra le'lahu gabra zilze ben li ar'a mikerabai. You have a woman in some place who tells an agent, a man, go and buy me some land from my relative in some other place. Azal zebanle. So this man, as an agent, goes and buys some land on behalf of this woman. We're going to find out her name is Navla. Amar le, ihavu li zuzeh mehadart la nihali. The seller says, okay, I'll sell you the land. I'll sell land to this relative over there. However, I want to know, if I can come up with the money later, can I get my land back? I'm going to sell it now because, listen, I need the cash. But if I come up with some cash later, can you give me a guarantee that I can buy my land back? Now, the buyer isn't there, but their agent is going to answer for her. The agent says, you and Navla are relatives, and so I'm sure you'll be able to come to an agreement. Now, this answer is ambiguous. Does he mean by that, is that a yes? I'm sure, is that a yes, Navla will agree to your, we are agreeing to your condition because you're relatives, and so therefore, I can guarantee that Navla will give you your land back if you come up with the money, your condition is valid. Or is he saying, no, your condition is not valid, but don't worry about it. She'll find some accommodation. She's likely to give you your land back because she's your relative after all. So what does that mean? Amar Ravuna, kol at v'navla ache amar samcha da'ate v'la gamar umakne. Ravuna says, any case like this where someone says, oh, you're relatives, right? Oh, so I'm sure they'll make good on it. In that case, the seller is relying on the assumption that the relative will come to an agreement and is not relying on the condition, meaning the condition is not valid. And therefore, in this case, the seller has not really decided to sell the field because the seller only wants to sell the field if he knows that he can get his land back. And since here the agent did not guarantee that, but just said, oh, rely on your relative to make you good. No, but he doesn't rely on her. And so therefore, he does not actually sell it. Now, if in the end, the agent takes the land and the woman, Navla, enjoys the produce of the land for some time, and then turns out when the court looks into it, it says, listen, this sale was never valid to begin with because, right, she thought that this was, she did it based on that condition, but it turns out that you never agreed to the condition, and therefore the sale is invalid. So we say, hadra pere mai. So certainly the land will go back to the seller because it turns out the seller never sincerely decided to give over the land, so she gets the land back. The question is about the produce that Navla enjoyed in the meantime until the court came in and figured all that out. Does she have to return the produce? Look, certainly it is prohibited for her to have taken the produce in the first place. There is interest here. Where is there interest? Not actually a loan. Well, even though it's a sale, it's kind of like the same as a loan because Navla gave $100,000 to the seller. Good. Now the seller has this for, let's say, 6 months until, right, it goes to the court, and then the court says you have to return the land and return the money. So she returns the money. Now, but she uses that money. She has it for 6 months. In the meantime, Navla enjoys produce. If you let her keep the produce, then she is getting monetary benefit for having given over $100,000 for the seller to use for some time. So this certainly looks like interest, but the question is it fixed interest, asur mideoraita, in which case the judges can force Navla to pay back the produce, which is the interest, or do we say it's only the dust of interest, it's only midrabanan? And we saw before, midrabanan, the person does not have to return it. It's nice of Navla it's a good idea to return avak ribit, but you don't have to. That's the question. And the answer is, Amar Bar Ravuna, mistaberaki avak ribit havu, ben yosin bedayanin. V'chen Amar Ravaki avak ribit havu, ben yosin bedayamin. Both Bar Ravuna and Rava say that this is only a hint of interest, and therefore the judges cannot force a Navla to return that produce. Now that we've established that in the case of a sale, where the sale does not end up going through, the produce that the buyer takes in the meantime is called avak ribit and does not have to return it. Now we're going to follow up with the question about mashkon. What about mashkanta? It means a mortgage. So here it's not a sale like it was in the previous case, but rather someone borrows $100,000 and he gives over his field as a mortgage. In that case, and what would we say about the fruit? Let's say the lender enjoys the fruit during the time of the loan. What would you say about that fruit? Does it have to be returned or not? It's first for sure prohibited, and everybody agrees it's prohibited because that's interest. But is it rebit ketzutza or rebit drabanan? Hatam ta'amamai mishum de la katzle hachana mi la kasle. In the previous case, did we say, right, in the two opinions here, Rav Huna and Rava, did they say that it's only avak ribit and it doesn't have to be returned because there was no fixed amount? They didn't go in saying you can you have to you can keep 10% as the amount, or for a certain amount, $1,000. They didn't set a fixed amount. And here also there's no fixed amount. It's just that the lender just took whatever produce there was. He took a random amount, whatever there happened to be. So because it was not fixed over there, that's why Savak Rabbanan. And here also they didn't fix an amount. They didn't agree on anything of what would happen with the produce, and therefore it's avak ribit and the lender can keep it. Or do we say that case was a sale, right? They thought it was a sale, and it turned out that the seller was not totally sincere and didn't fully give in to giving it over, so it's returned. But still, in the case of a sale, it's you're always going to be more lenient in the case of a sale because it's a step removed from a loan and therefore less similar to an interest. Whereas this case of a mashkon, of a mortgage, it is actually a case of a loan. So maybe we'll be more strict here and consider this to be rebit deoraita, and it can be removed. That was the question to Rabbah. And he says the reason is not necessarily because it's a sale. It doesn't matter if it's a sale or a loan. If you don't fix an amount for the interest, then it's not deoraita. And here also, they did not fix the amount of the interest. They just took whatever produce happened to be around, and therefore it's only avak ribit. Amara papi avad rabina obada v'chashev v'apek pere dela keraba bar Rav Huna. Papi reports that Ravina, a case just like this, once came and he calculated how much produce did the seller take, or the lender take from it, and he removed it from the lender. He says, no, you can't have it. And this disagrees with Rabba bar Rav Huna, who says it's avak ribit in both of these cases. It's not clear if the case of Ravina was a loan or a sale or a loan, but in any case, the reasoning is the same, and therefore, you see Ravina disagrees with Rabba bar Rav Huna and says, even though it's not a fixed amount, nevertheless it's considered interest, and he removed it from the person who enjoyed the produce in the meantime. Amar mor bered Rav Yosef mishme de Rava. Ha mashkanta be'atra de masaliki. Achal shiur zuzeh masaliki nanle. Okay, now Mor, the son of Rav Yosef, said in the name of Rava, a mortgage in a place where they remove the lender. So we're talking about, it's kind of like today, if someone takes a mortgage, can you prepay the mortgage, right, and then and be done with the loan? Most banks, I think, allow it, but some banks don't. So in this case, let's say you said a mortgage, you have a loan, and the loan's going to be for 3 years. So what if the borrower comes up with money and wants to pay the loan? In the meantime, the borrower gives some land as mortgage to the lender. And when the borrower comes up with money and wants to pay all after 1 year, pay the whole thing and get his land back. So there are different customs in different places. So if you're in a place where you can prepay the loan and get the land back, that makes it actually more like a loan. In places that they don't allow that, that makes it more like a temporary sale. It's a sale for 3 years. Okay, keep that in mind. We'll get to that case soon. So in a place where you can prepay and remove it, if the lender enjoyed enough produce that's the same amount as the amount of the loan. Let's say the loan was for $10,000, and over the year he got $10,000 worth of produce. Then that's it. He got paid without the borrower having to lay out any money. The lender got paid from the produce that he collected, and therefore you can remove him from the land, and the borrower can take back his land on the basis of that produce. However, if the lender took more produce than that, he took 11,000. In that case, we do not remove the extra 1,000 from him, right? The 10,000, okay, you got the 10,000, that's your repayment of the loan. Now get off the land, and he keeps that extra. Of course, it's avak ribit. It's still not allowed, but you don't take it away from him because it's only avak ribit. And furthermore, let's say this borrower has another outstanding loan that he also has to pay besides the 10,000, a 5,000 for a different contract. You can't take this 1,000 additional and apply it to another loan, because this 11,000 came from the mortgage that was for this loan, and so you can't take that land was designated, so you can't apply it to anything else, and therefore the lender keeps that extra 1,000, can't take it away from him. But that only applies to a case where the borrower is an adult. But if the borrower are orphan children, so then we always give benefit to the orphan children, and therefore, if the orphan children have a loan outstanding, and they gave land to the lender, once the lender eats produce that's the equivalent to the amount of the loan, that's it, we remove the lender. And if the lender eats more, let's say 11,000, then we remove it from him, and we apply it also to another loan if they have another loan outstanding. So we're going to be more lenient on behalf of the orphans in that case. Amar Rav Ashi, Hashtad Amar Achal Tefer Lama Pekinan Mine, Achal Shiruzuzeh Nami La Mesalikinan Le Belazuzeh. Rav Ashi disagrees with that opinion, and he says, listen, once you tell me that in the case of adults, that if he enjoys more than the 10,000, 11,000 of the produce, we let him keep it, that means you're calling it avak ribit. And therefore, the logic will ensue that even if he has the 10,000, the exact same amount as the loan, also you cannot remove him from the land without payment. Why? To remove the lender from the land without the borrower paying anything out of pocket, that's the same as taking the produce, the amount of the produce, away from the lender. You're considering that money that he has to return. So you say, instead of returning any money, keep it as payment for the loan. So then that means you're considering it like the oraita ribit. So, but it's not the oraita ribit, because you said that any extra he can keep. So it's clear that you think it's avak ribit, and the avak ribit, judges do not remove it from him. And therefore this lender who ate 10,000 of produce, well, that's avak ribit, and he keeps it, and you do not apply it to the loan. He can stay on the land until the borrower comes up with cash out of pocket and pays. Furthermore, Rav Ashi also disagrees regarding the orphans. He's not lenient on behalf of the orphans, and the case came regarding with orphan children, and he treated them the same as adults and would not apply the added amount to another loan. Certainly, for sure, he didn't do that. He would not even kick off the lender, even though the lender ate produce that was equivalent of the loan. No, instead, the Yatomim or their apotropos would have to pay the loan out of pocket. Amar Rabba bered Rav Yosef mishemed Rava. The Rava, the son of Rav Yosef, said in the name of his teacher Rava, Hai mashkanta batra dim saleki la nechul ela benachyata. Midrabanan afilu benachyata la nechul. So he says, when you have a mortgage, and we're talking still in a place where the practice is if you prepay, then you can remove the lender from the land. In the meantime, the lender should not enjoy produce unless they make a nachyata, a deduction deal. That means that instead of just keeping whatever produce he has and then calculating each year how much was that, make a fixed amount. Let's say the loan is for $1,000 and the produce is about, $100 a year. So make a fixed amount. Just say every year that you stay on the land and enjoy the produce, the amount of the loan goes down 100. That is permitted because in that case, the lender is accepting risk. It could be that he'll enjoy more than $100 worth of produce. Good, then there's benefit. But it could be that the land will produce less, and then he'll lose out. So as long as you make it a fixed deduction from the loan every year, then that's permitted. Now, all this is only necessary in a place where you can prepay and kick out the lender. If you're in a place where you cannot prepay, well, then that makes the entire thing like a temporary sale, because even if he pays back the loan, he can't kick the lender out. That's basically saying this is a sale for 3 years or 5 years, and can't do anything. If it's a temporary sale, then the lender, who's really the buyer, of course he can consume the produce without any problem, without any deal, without any calculation, because it's his. So he's enjoying it the whole time that it's his. And then afterwards, it will go back, he'll return it, and basically repaying the debt is the same as rebuying the loan. So in the case where you cannot prepay, then we're going to look at it like a temporary sale, and so the buyer/lender can enjoy the produce. This whole problem that we need to find a way around is where you can prepay the loan and kick the lender out. So then obviously this is a loan. It's not a sale. You can't have a sale where anytime you come in back with the money, you kick the buyer out. Okay, so in such a place, you can do it as long as you make a fixed amount. However, Talmid Chacham, a sage, should not do even this because it doesn't look right? Even though technically it's permitted because he's accepting risk upon himself, still it kind of looks like he's taking interest, and therefore a lender who's a Talmid Chacham should not get involved in such a thing. However, what if a Torah scholar does want to enter in some kind of deal like this? Is there a permitted way to do it? Yes, with a kisuta. Kisuta is a kind of making a partnership that's like a sharecropper. We'll define further the details of this sharecropper. So we say, Hanich alamanda mar kisuta sharia, elamanda mar kisuta sira maik alememar. So if a rabbinic sage wants to do such a deal, fine, he could do the kisuta according to the opinion that kisuta is permitted. But there is another opinion that says kisuta, the sharecropper deal, is not permitted. Then what would you do? Now we'll fill in the background. Ditmar, kisuta peliga ba Rav Acha v'Ravina. Chad amar kisuta sharia, v'chad amar kisuta asira. These two Amoraim, Rav Acha and Ravina, disagree. One of them, we don't say which one is which, says that it's permitted, and one says it's prohibited. Now what are we talking about? Hechidami kisuta. Damar le ad chamesh shanin achilna la bela nachaita. Mikan ve'elach shayimna lach kulehu pere. There's going to be two opinions about what this kisuta is. This is the first opinion. So some guy owns land. I guess he needs money. So he gets a loan of $100,000 and he gives it over to the lender. Now the lender makes the following deal. The lender is holding on to this property and using it and enjoying the produce. And he says, from now for the next 5 years, I am going to have all the produce without reducing from the amount of the loan. That's my share, right? This is a partnership. I get the first 5 years. And from after that, from the next 5 years and on, however long that will be, then it will deduct from the loan. And this is a kind of, since we're sharing it, we're kind of partners in it. You owned it, but I put money into it. Now I gave you money for it. So we're seeing this as a kind of a partnership. I get everything for the first 5 years. Then you get everything for the time after that. And you get everything. Well, actually, the lender is going to eat the physical produce, but will deduct the amount of it. That's one opinion about what kisuta is. Ika amre kol bela nachaita asur. This opinion says that if you're not doing a nachaita deduction, making an estimate that at a fixed amount for every year, then it's not allowed. So in that case, aval hechida kisuta. So how can you have a kisuta that would be permitted according to the opinion that it is permitted? Damar le ad 5 shani nachilna ben nachaita mikan ve'elach shayimna lach kulehu pere. You have to combine the kisuta sharecropping idea with the nachaita standard deduction idea. And he says, the lender says as follows: for the first 5 years, I will consume for a fixed amount, $1,000 per year. That goes, I'm going to take all the produce, could be more, could be less, but we deduct that fixed amount from your loan, and from after 5 years, from then on, then you can deduct all of the produce that I consume. So this is even more removed from being interest, because there's never a case where the lender is consuming everything for free. Now, the one who says that kisuta is the first one where you're only doing the sharecropping, for sure the second one would be permitted, because that's even farther away from interest. But the one who says not only is the first one prohibited, but even the second was prohibited, that the whole kisuta thing does not work. So then, according to that opinion, how can a Talmid Chacham ever enter into a situation like this? Shareki mashkanta desura dechatvi bahachi b'mishlam shenaya ilen tepok ar'ada bela kesaf. They can do the type of mortgage that's made in Surah, where they write it down in a document. So first of all, that makes it clearer and more like a sale because it's in a document. And furthermore, it says at the end of a certain number of years, let's say 10 years, then the land goes back to the original owner without any payment. So we make a loan now for $100,000, but really, for all effects and purposes, it is actually a temporary sale. So the $100,000 goes to the borrower. Good. The land goes to the seller, or lend to the buyer or / lender. So he gave $100,000, he gets the land, and he can keep all of the produce in the meantime. And he doesn't have to make any kind of sharecropping or fix any fixed amount, because he basically is the owner of the land. And so he gets all the produce, and at the end of 10 years, then the land goes back to the borrower, and the borrower does not have to pay any money. So in effect, we're considering the produce to be payment for the loan and deducting it, but we're not even saying every year it deducts a certain amount. So it's not even considering it like that. We're just basically saying it snaps back automatically after 10 years, and therefore the lender is taking a lot of risk, right? Because it could be he'll eat more, it could be he'll eat less, but this is very far removed from looking like interest, because it's not calculated per year, but only over the course of the entire loan, which basically makes it like a temporary sale, and the lender is like the buyer who eats all the produce in the meantime. These two sages agree on the following. If you have a mortgage in a place where the borrower can prepay before the debt is due and get their land back and kick off the lender, so in that case, this is considered more like a loan than a sale. We're going to see the contrast here in a second. And other places where you cannot prepay, then that's more like a sale. So in this kind of case where it's clearly a loan, and Baal Chov Goveh Hemena, let's say the lender himself has money that he owes to other people. So those other people, those other creditors, they cannot collect from this land. Normally, they can collect from land that this guy, the guy in the middle, the lender in the middle, has. They can collect from it. But this land that the lender has is only mortgaged. It's owned by the borrower, and he's just holding on to it and maybe even enjoying its fruits in the meantime. But he's only holding on to it temporarily as a mortgage. He doesn't own it, and therefore his creditors cannot take it. Furthermore, if he dies, this lender, his firstborn will not take double. Why? A firstborn only takes double from the assets of his father that his father owns, but his father does not own this mortgage property. He's only holding on to it temporarily as a mortgage security. And if the seventh year comes, it cancels all loans, including this one. This is an outstanding loan. It's true that he has this property, but he doesn't own the property. This is not called paid up. This is an outstanding loan, and all outstanding loans are cancelled. However, if you're in a place where you cannot prepay, and so this is for a set term, that here's $100,000, I'm taking your land for 10 years, right, and you cannot prepay it. There, it's more like a temporary sale. As a temporary sale, the lender owns this land for this whole time with all of the consequences. In that case, if this lender himself owes money to someone else, that other person, that creditor, can come and take this property from him because he owns it. What will happen in 10 years? Well, okay, they'll have to deal with it then. And if this lender dies, then the oldest son, takes double because this is the father's assets. At that time, he fully owns it. And furthermore, Shavi'it will not cancel the debt because we don't even consider it like a debt. We consider it like a temporary sale. Basically, the lender, he got what he gave $100,000, but he has this land. So it's more like he bought it. So he owns this land, and so it's not going to cancel the debt. The borrower is going to have to come up with the money in 10 years, and then he'll get his land back, but that's kind of like a resale, and so therefore Shavi'it does not cancel it because it's not considered a loan. Again, another law in the name of Rav Papa, this was Rav Papa. Muzita says in the name of Rav Papa the following law. If you have a mortgage in a place where you can prepay and remove the lender from it, once he does that, he says, here, I have the $100,000, and now give me my land back. Now, what about the fruit that fell on the mats, but the lender did not yet make an acquisition on it? That goes back to the borrower too. He gets the land, and he gets any fruit that falls, and you put out mats, and then you shake the tree, whatever falls on the mats, right? Now you're going to collect. Who collects it? Well, the borrower can take it because there was no acquisition done on it. However, if the lender picked it up in baskets, put in baskets and picked up the baskets, then that's an act of acquisition. As long as he did that before the borrower paid everything up, the lender can keep that. However, according to, there is an opinion that says vessels of a buyer, even though they're in the property of the seller, they acquire for him, like someone's bag, even if it's in someone else's house or store, is like their little property, and so they can acquire it even so, and the buyer will acquire it. This would be like in the case if I bring my own bag into someone else's store and fill it up with things, so then I acquire it because it's in my bag. I'll be then responsible for it. So according to that opinion, in this case, it would be the same thing. Even though the borrower now prepaid, and now the land is his again, but the mats belong to the lender, and so anything fruit that fell on the mats will belong to the lender, even if he did not pick them up and put them in baskets and pick them up. Still, he will have acquired it already. Peshita be'atrad misalikiv amar la mistalakna ha ka'amar de la mistalakna. Now, let's say you're in a place where the general custom is that a borrower can prepay and kick off the lender. But if the lender said, I'm not leaving, I'm not following those rules, well, then we respect that right, and the lender has a right to set the rules of what this is going to be. He says, no, I wanted this, we said a 10-year loan, and I'm staying here for all 10 years. I don't want your money. I don't want you to pay back. I want to use this land for 10 years. Or la, but what about the other way around? If you're in a place where you cannot prepay, and we assume that this is like a temporary sale, and you can stay there for 10 years, but then the lender says, listen, I'm willing, if you want to prepay, I'm willing to give it back to you if you want, right? It's your option. So since he's giving something over, the question is, do you have to make a formal acquisition to show that he really means it sincerely? Or do you not? Is his verbal statement sufficient? Rav Papa says it's enough for him to say so. You don't have to make an acquisition like with a sudat or anything. Rav Shashat son of Idi, says you do have to make an acquisition. Yet you do have to, because the assumption is that it's his land, like a temporary sale, and now he's giving something over to say, okay, you know what, it's not mine, it's just a mortgage, and it's really your land, and you can take it back anytime you want to pay. So you need an act of acquisition to make that official. Amar ezil va'tezuzeh la'achil. Now, if the borrower, let's say in a place where he can evict the lender when he pays, even if he just says, listen, I'm going to get money and I'm going to pay you. I just have to go down. I have to go to the bank. I'm going to get the money. I'll be back in an hour and I'm going to pay you. From that time on, once he makes that declaration, the lender can no longer eat any produce. However, if he adds the word tarach, if the borrower says, listen, I'm going to go and try to get money, and I'm going to go to the bank, I'm going to try to get a loan, I'm going to see, maybe I have money, I'll come back tomorrow, I'll see if I have it and bring money and pay you back. So what about then? He's trying to. Ravina Amad Achil. Ravina says that doesn't count. Then the lender can still eat the produce because he's not for sure that he's going to have the money. Mozutre Beret Ramari Amad La Achil. Mozutre, son of Ramari, says no, he cannot, because the borrower stated his intention to buy back the land, and he has to go do some work, but he's going to do it. Vilchata La Achil, but the halacha is like the first opinion that says he cannot, the lender, once the borrower says, it's like Mozutra, the son of Amari's opinion, that he does not eat it because he said, I'm going to try and get the money. We assume that he's really going to try and he's probably going to get the money, and therefore the lender has to stop eating the produce. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen ve'amen.